community and solidarity, to just have a forum and a safe space for people to share their lived experiences, their feelings, and emotions, because it was a tough year, and in particular, at the beginning of this year, a tough time for many folks of Asian descent. And so excited today to continue, hopefully, a series of these conversations in a more intimate setting where we focus on sharing our stories with each other, on sharing our origins, where we come from, what our values are, what our beliefs are, that type of thing, in the hopes that we can all build more connections with each other. And I am absolutely honored to have the opportunity to introduce my sister, Jane, who's here with us today. And just to give a quick introduction to my sister, she is my big sister, first of all. We've been very close throughout most of our lives, despite living in different places for most of the world. She left home when I was 7. Went off to college in San Diego and then moved to the East Coast, stayed in Boston for law school, did a bunch of different really cool things, was a wedding photographer for a while, a really creative artist for some time as well, and finally sort of is finding a lot of success as a EVP at Studio ID, or formerly NewsCred. But that's kind of her story. I'll let you introduce yourself really quickly, sis, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm so happy to be here with all of you. Like Alaric said, my name is Jane. When I think about who I am, I'm a mom. I live in suburban New Jersey. I'm also a member of the executive team at Industry Dive, and Industry Dive is a pretty fast-growing B2B media company. And what we do is we have 21 different publications for industries as diverse as construction or supply chain, retail, CFO. And what I'm responsible for is actually growing, leading, and building the $35 million content studio attached to that. So one of the things that we're doing every single day is actually helping brands tell their stories. And when Alaric asked me to come on and be able to kind of share with all of you guys my own story, it feels like a real honor. So appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. And hopefully it's an opportunity for me to embarrass my brother a little bit too.
I definitely looking forward to that the most, as I have my whole life. So thank you for that, sis. And so we're going to record the session because I know there are quite a few folks who were unable to join because of time zone differences. So we'll just make sure that we have that session available afterwards for everyone so that you can view it on your own time too. But moderating the session today will be myself, as well as Julie E., who's here with us today as well. And we'll spend some amount of the time just talking through a couple of community-oriented questions for you, sis. And after that, we'll open up for some Q&A. And for the latter part of this, break up into small groups where we just talk about sort of our own stories and get a chance to meet and connect. And so if that's all right with everybody, then we might launch into the first question here, which is just, in general, everyone here, I think, is curious to understand your story and your background, sis. So if you don't mind, starting off with that, I'm sure we all love to hear it.
Yes, absolutely. And I will say, I see we have a good intimate group here. So would hope that this time that we have together can be pretty interactive. If folks feel comfortable turning on cameras or just kind of jumping in and asking questions, or maybe building connections from some of the things we have in common, really welcome that as well. Okay. And Alaric, I think you asked me to share my story. One of the things that's funny is that it's sometimes hard for us to talk about ourselves, right? And when Alaric and I were chatting about this session, I was about to launch into all of my career development best practices and how to get a promotion at work. And Alaric actually said, hey, I think this community and this group is about the stories that make us who we are, and they can actually be a little bit more personal. So I'm going to actually just share a little bit of my personal life story, which actually isn't, it doesn't start with me. It actually starts with, let me see here. Can you guys see a lovely woman in a pink dress here? Yeah, perfect. It actually starts with this woman here that you see on the screen. She's my mom. And actually, I guess, Alaric, she is also your mom. She is our mother. And this little monkey here is actually me when I was a child playing the violin. My mom's actually a violinist by trade. But the thing that is really important and meaningful to me about her story, she, and I'm sure a lot of you have stories out there that are similar from your parents or your grandparents or your community as well. But my mom grew up in a time in China that was just very kind of politically, socially, economically challenging. And when she was a little girl in China, it was during the Cultural Revolution, and her family was actually hazed. She had her head shaved. She got sent to the country, wasn't allowed to go to school. And she's shared with me stories about how she used to walk around the schoolyard, peeking into the schoolhouse, just wishing that she could get an education. And her story is the story that actually kind of starts the journey for my family. She picked up a violin when she was young, and she just had such a determination and ambition to have the best possible life, despite pretty challenging origins and circumstances. So she picked up her violin and became an amazing violinist, and actually used that as a tool and mechanism to get back into the big city, Beijing. And it's actually that same determination that made her really kind of pull our entire family and decide to bring us to the US when I was 6. It's the same determination that she carried throughout her life to really make sure that Alaric and I could have all the opportunities, but also just all the confidence and all the nice things and all the happiness that we can build our lives from. So, I share her story because the older I get, the more I realize that her origin story actually just impacts all of my decision making, who I am, my values, what's meaningful to me, and also what I believe about the world and how I want to treat other people as well. Right. Um, Now, my own story, let's see, and you guys will indulge me here, alerts that I could share a couple of photos, but the patchy haired creature over here, that's me as a child. But I was born in Beijing, came to the US when I was 6, and when my family and I first came here, and again, I'm wondering if a lot of you have maybe kind of similar stories from your families and your communities as well. Those first years of being in the US were uh, some of the clearest memories that I have even to date in my life. Um, we were very poor, and my parents were world-class musicians back in China, but you do what you have to do to make ends meet and to be able to kind of afford the rent and learn a new language and fit in. So, I have a lot of memories and a lot of pride in those first few years and everything that my mom, my dad, our family had to do to make sure to bring us to today, where Alaric and I can be talking to you about our stories. Right? Um, when I was in high school, I had a lot of great, smart, supportive people around me. But I got to be honest with you guys, I had no idea what college was. I didn't really know what the application process looked like. But the thing that's actually, something that I reflect on is I simply didn't know what career options were out there. I didn't really know much beyond, well, I can be a lawyer, I can be a doctor, I can work in a store. What are the different things that I could do? And just didn't have a lot of connections or people who I could kind of explore. Well, what's a speech pathologist, right? And, what are the different types of scientists that are out there? What is engineering? And so because I didn't quite know what I wanted to do, obviously I went to law school. I went to college and then I went to law school. Even in college, when a lot of the subjects that I was studying, I was a social and international relations double major, I was kind of experiencing my own political awakening and kind of realizing like the values that I have in my day-to-day life. I still didn't know a lot about the world or the practicalities of the world or what I could do with a college degree or where I wanted to live, or what is the meaning of money, right? And what are all the different options out there? And so when I went into law school, it was with a combination of, I think, just naivete and optimism, and also just seemed like the thing that might fit my skill set in the best way. So graduated from law school, and that was actually during a time when Lehman fell, and really big law firm jobs were actually hard to come by. And I went into law school, remembering my youth and wanting to practice nonprofit law, wanting to be an advocate for folks who belong to underserved communities, wanted to maybe one day go into politics, all kind of vague ideas. And I really allowed what seemed like the most ambitious thing to do to kind of take over. So when I was one of the lucky ones who got a big law firm job at the end of my law firm, my law school days, I took it, right? And I went into a big law firm, moved to New York, practiced law. And pretty much from day one, I realized, wow, I'm really gonna hate my life if I keep doing this for too much longer. And then it became a decision point for me. And it can be really hard, especially given, all of us have different family stories and different backgrounds. For me, the stability and certainty that, practicing law at a big firm provides, not necessarily for me, but for my mom, who never had that stability or certainty in her life, that was very meaningful. And to think about walking away from that, it was a really tough decision. Now, a lot of people ask, "Oh my gosh, your Asian parents, were they upset when you decided to leave the law? Did they give you a lot of pressure?" And the answer is actually no. They were 1000% supportive. And that was actually a pretty surprising thing even for me. But when you actually dig into it, it's not very surprising because, here you have two kind of uh, people who always wanted to break the mold, and a violinist from rural China. My dad is a pianist who also worked his way from rural China to Beijing to the US. They're actually rule breakers and risk takers by nature, and so it was actually them encouraging me to do the things that I really wanted to do in life that actually made the decision a lot easier. So a couple years into practicing the law, I decided I wanted to be a photographer. And also realized that I was a terrible lawyer. Nobody should have ever hired me for that. And I decided that um, that that was the moment it was right to make a decision, because I wonder if all of us ask, hey, I'm not quite satisfied with where I am in my life, in my personal life, in my career, but the risk involved in making a big change, it's weighty, right? That's a big weight on our shoulders. And I think at that moment, like my rational mind took over, and I realized, and I was kind of looking at some of the partners at the law firm, and looking at the lives that they led. And I just realized that the actual logical thing was to make that change as soon as I knew that it was a change that I needed to make. Because the longer we don't make that change, the longer changes don't happen, right? And when is the right moment to make a change in our lives or in our career? Well, it's the moment that you decide to do it. And the analysis that I went through was basically, what's the worst case scenario here, and can I handle that? And for me, the worst case scenario was, well, everyone's gonna laugh at me. I'm not gonna have any money. I'm gonna have to move back in with my parents. And again, and kind of calling back to my mom's story of when I was 7, and here's a world-class violinist cleaning bathrooms at a church to make $1 or $2. I could handle that, right? And so made that change, and hustled for a couple of years. I worked for free. I taught SATs. I handed out flyers, and really just tried to break through into a creative industry and kind of discover what was out there. Long story short, I ended up realizing that it wasn't something that's kind of pure creative that was really my calling or something I was passionate about. And it wasn't actually the thing that I was going to do that would make me happy. It was actually, what does my day-to-day experience in my career look like? And what are the things that actually drive me and interest me? And what I discovered is it's actually business and working with great people and being able to make or build or create new things together, right? So when I was able to then go into marketing SaaS, marketing software, um, I ended up joining a company called NewsCred, where everyone had a very similar spirit of wanting to build something together. And everyone was very smart. There was a lot of great communication. And I was learning so much from the people around me. Uh, and, uh, um, and over the years, it made me want to invest even more in the company and building the thing that we were trying to build. And over the years, it also made the company kind of invest more in me. So giving me the opportunity to take on new initiatives, lead a team, lead another team, build a new go-to-market. And eventually what that led to was us being able to actually divest half of the company, which I ran, joining a new company, integrating with a new company, and being able to build a really, really successful growing business. And, when I connect the professional and personal part of my lives, um, feeling today just incredibly grateful for my mom, Rain, but incredibly grateful for all of the learnings along the way. And if I had to kind of put a string across all of it, it's actually a combination of just risk taking and maybe a little bit of um, just grit, pure grit, um, and uh, and maybe a little bit of shamelessness too that kind of contributed to where I am today. So sorry, that was quite long, but wanted to share a little bit of that. And in terms of where I am today, these are my two little monkeys. This little girl is Ada. She turned out to be blonde. We don't know why, but she's very cute. This is Tycho. He's 4. That's my third monkey. That's my husband. And we've been able to really build our lives in a way that that we can only really be grateful for. So that's my story.
I love that. I definitely identify with some of those pieces in your story as well. Especially, I know growing up, I thought I knew what I wanted to do, and I wasn't quite sure. And then you just sort of like ebb and flow, right? So seeing, and I think you've alluded to this in the converse, in sort of like talking about your story, but like seeing where you are now, are there elements of like where you are now that you like thinking back, you're like, yes, this is where I wanted to be? Or is this totally like different than what you've ever pictured yourself like doing and being in your life right now?
It's a good question, right? I mean, to be honest, I still don't know where I want to be. And I think that's pretty intentional. If you had asked me when, on the first day of elementary school, when I was kind of surrounded by non-Asians for the first time and, couldn't even spell my own name, or even if you had asked me at the end of law school, is this where you think you would be living in suburban New Jersey, working as an executive at a media company, having such great opportunities to build teams and be successful in business? Absolutely not. There was absolutely no way I could have predicted or imagined that. But I think what's important to me is that I've learned throughout my life, and I'm going to continue learning throughout my life, that it's not just the world that evolves, it's actually the things that we believe and our own selves. We evolve every single day too. Every single day is a new day for more inputs and for learning and for adjusting the things that we believe and what our values are. And that fluidity throughout our lives and that growth and learning actually can lead us to places that are unexpected and likely better than we could have expected.
Feel like there's a part of this story that you've alluded to as well, just at the end here, but haven't explicitly addressed. In addition to being sort of wildly successful along all these different directions and dimensions over the years, and now having a pretty senior leadership role as a people leader and a team leader, you also are the parent of 2 beautiful kids. And in my head, my big question is always, how on earth do you manage to do all of that? And how has that sort of been over the past few years in your journey, the trade-offs, the balances, pros, what's going on there? Love to learn more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's hard, right? I remember a few years ago doing kind of a leadership panel, and I had just had my first child, Taiko, and it was for International Women's Day. And I got up in front of a crowd and I said, I believe that I can have everything. Why? Because my mom was able to do everything and I can do everything too with the support of a village around me. I can have my career, I can be the best mom, I can be happy, I can have my own interests. And 4 years on, and I'm sure, again, I'll learn throughout my life, that's just not the case. There are deep trade-offs that we make every single day because of the decisions that we make. And that's something that, I wish I had a clear answer, do this or do that. But it's something that I'm calibrating every single day too, right? I love my job. I work as part of a 300-person company, but I have a 70-person team. And in many ways, every single person on my team, from someone who's 2 years out of school to senior leadership folks who are running the business and building the business with me, they're my family too, right? And it comes with a lot of pride and also a lot of moments of guilt and questioning. Hey, should I have prioritized, taking Taiko to school or his Halloween parade instead of joining that particular client call, right? But where I am right now with that is I'm gonna just do my best, right? If you had asked my mom, she would have said the same thing. She just did her best, and at the end of the day, her best is the best, and I feel like my best is the best as well. The choices and priorities that I have today, they're going to continue to evolve, right? Today, I will be the first to say that work takes a lot of precedence in my life. Why? Because I'm trying to do the same thing that my mom did for me. And for Alaric, I want to make sure that I can demonstrate to my daughter Ada, to my son Taiko, that someone who looks like me and someone with my backstory can be the best at what they do in their career as well. And I think I have, I also, the older I get, the deeper I feel a responsibility to make sure that that we can demonstrate that not only to our families, but also to our communities, to the people on this call, to the people at work, to other organizations out there that maybe aren't diverse enough. And I think the last couple of years have brought that to, have kind of crystallized that too, which is, if we end up, we don't have enough women executives. We don't have enough Asian executives. We don't have enough Asian politicians, senators, presidents, judges, right? And one day we will, right? But when we actually get to that point, I don't want it to be because, hey, we've adjusted who we are in order to fit the mold of what those people ought to be. I want it to be because we're really, really proud of the stories of where we came from and who we are, and how our own journeys and our own stories and our own communities have made us who we are today, which is not the answer to your question. I diverged a little bit, but there you go.
With your story, have you always been really comfortable sharing your path? I think it's one of those things, like sometimes, whether it's shame, I don't like it's a really harsh word, but whether there's preconceived notions or different social factors, like how has that, have you, I guess I'll go back to, have you always felt comfortable?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. No, the answer is no. But it wasn't so much a conscious no, right? We're all complicated creatures, at the end of the day. It's kind of a mixture of pride and shame and a lot of different other feelings that maybe we reflect on our own lives with. For me, I remember, probably much like, many other high schoolers out there, I spent a good amount of my life unconsciously wanting to be like everyone else, right? And all the little and big ways that I could be normal, especially when, when a lot of kind of my childhood is rooted in this feeling of being foreign, or rooted in this feeling of otherness, right? And it wasn't conscious to me that I wasn't comfortable feeling and sharing kind of the different elements of my story and my background until I got really angry. And this was pretty recently, over the last few years. And I realized that that actually by wanting to make other people feel good about about my story, or just being part of the flow, that I was kind of doing myself a disservice, because the older I've gotten, the more I realize that the things that I'm most proud of in my life are actually the things that are different, and the things that created this feeling of otherness. The hardships that my family went through, or the decisions that were controversial at the time, or some of the more bold choices I've been able to make in my life. And that's been a real evolution for me, and maybe for a number of us out there as well. But it's something that I'm really proud of. And this is something that I carry through with my team as well. I think it's actually really important, at least to me, for us in business as well as in our personal lives, to be able to create the kind of environment where we can bring our stories, bring our whole selves, right? And be able to share, because these stories are, and maybe I'll give a different example, right? I don't want to stereotype too much, but, maybe I don't have a ton in common with a white man from the Deep South, right? But, when I'm talking to different folks and I actually hear the stories that are out there from people who don't have my background, who are different from me, it just creates a lot of empathy, and it makes me realize that we truly do have more in common than we have apart. And if we're not able to share our own stories and hear and listen and empathize and have an open mind about other people's stories as well, it won't lend itself to creating the kind of world that I want. And that's where there truly is a diversity of voices that make up our communities out there.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I totally resonate that. And that actually answers the question I was going to ask, which is, what is the value that comes from sharing one story? But I think empathy is such a meaningful thing to derive from storytelling and sharing a story and building that connection with someone who might not be even from the same plane of existence you are. And so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about that. I think my last question for you before we move on into open Q&A is just one that sort of I think about all the time. Do you have any advice for your younger self, right? At certain junctures of your life, would you have done anything differently, or wished you had heard something that steered you in a different direction?
My younger self, save your money. No, there's some practical things that I think we can all share with our younger selves. I would go back and tell my younger self, and it's one of those things that it's only really the passage of time that is going to kind of show you the results of your decisions in life, right? But I do have a lot of folks who are younger in their career come and talk to me, and maybe they're at a crossroads, right? And they're not sure if decision A or decision B are really the right decision for them. And I think I would have told my younger self, and I often tell folks, there's a lot of different paths that maybe get you to different places, but that's a really, really good thing, right? And the exploration that you can do early on in your career, and the amount of risk taking that you can take is something that becomes harder and harder, actually, as you go farther into your career. Or farther into your life. I today wouldn't be able to make the decisions that I made when I was in my 20s, and And leaving the law really just meant me hustling for a couple of years, right? That's not a decision I can make for my 4-year-old or for my 1-year-old. So I do think that to my younger self, I'm really glad that a spirit of risk taking and kind of grabbing life by the horns and thinking about exploring all the things that are interesting to you and exploring the world, all of those things, they actually do and can bear fruit. And you know what? Sometimes risks don't pay off. Well, you pick yourself up and you rebuild and you explore more and you find new opportunities, and it's going to turn out great. And I'm really glad that that I made those decisions when I was young. So I think it's encouraging a spirit of exploration and curiosity and risk taking, especially when at different points in our lives, we might have the opportunity to do that.
I think it's what you're hitting upon too, is a little bit of like resiliency, right? How resilient we are as people, and the ability for us to really ebb and flow. And when things get like hard, we can still like get it done. And especially when we have to, right? When our backs are against the wall.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right. And, I think about, our community, that's a characteristic maybe a lot of us have in common, that resiliency. And I think it can, do I wish we needed it? No, right. But do I think we can leverage it to achieve our goals as a community, to achieve our personal goals, our personal career goals, our personal life goals? Yes, right. And I really think that boldness is also a really important value for me. It's about thinking about what is the most that we can get out of every single day that furthers our goals. And not everyone's goals have to be the same either. There's kind of just a boldness of kind of what your life goals need to look like. I think it's incredibly bold when somebody doesn't want to be an executive at a business, right? They have a passion that's outside of traditional paths, right? And even that can be a really bold decision that can get to the type of life that is really meaningful for all of us. And I think that is also important. It's trying to find meaning from why we are here, right? Why are we here, and what's meaningful to you, and what are the things that you care about, and what are the different decisions that can help you build the life that you want.
Really inspiring. And I mean, as always, I have, this has been true for the last 28 years of my life, that I've always been inspired by you, sis. And it's just so nice to hear you talk through all of your journey, your life journey, your story today as well, so that hopefully can inspire others too. At this point, I think maybe we can open up to, open Q&A. Feeling encouraging everyone to either unmute their mic or raise their hand or type in the chat, whatever makes the most sense. I'll also go ahead and turn off the recording now, so that we can talk in an open setting as well. But I think we have one